Welcome to Wise Traditions, Vicki.
Thank you, Hilda, for asking me to converse with you this morning on a topic that's near and dear to my heart.
Well, I think a lot of women are very interested in this issue of fertility and infertility, understanding their cycles better, and you are an expert in that. How long have you been at this?
I've been at this in various respects since almost 40 years ago. I started learning about my own fertility, then became very interested in teaching that awareness to others.
Well, I understand that you've had all kinds of wonderful successes and seen women achieve fertility and understand their cycles better. Tell me one of your stories. I think you said there was a young woman who had PCOS who came to you.
Yes, her name is Kayleen. She has told me that I may provide her name when I talk about her particular story, and I have it written down here as something she wrote to me. So I will just convey that to the listeners, and hopefully that will be an impetus for them to pursue more healthy eating and lifestyle changes for their own fertility cycles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as Kayleen said, she said, at the age of 26, I was diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, after my doctor had done some blood tests. I was relieved to officially have an explanation for all the symptoms I was experiencing. These symptoms included long and irregular cycles, a weight gain of about 40 pounds, which put me at an overweight BMI, or body mass index. I had facial hair and acne. I was also concerned about low thyroid function because I had low basal temperatures, which can be a sign of low thyroid function. My fingernails were peeling and my heels were cracked. My doctor said that weight loss was the best thing I could do, so I could try to diet and exercise. But she also wanted to put me on some sort of medication, which is called metformin, and also an antibacterial face wash right away. I had already made changes to my diet and exercise regimen, but it didn't help. And I certainly didn't want to go on medications, which I would potentially have to take the rest of my life. So she contacted me
Mm-hmm.
and explained her situation, and then she asked for help. After I had asked her a few more background questions, I recommended that she do a program that would help heal her gut, which would restore her hormone balance and thus reverse the polycystic ovarian syndrome. So Kayleen started to change her cleaning and personal hygiene products to more natural or organic ones. And as Kayleen said, at first I was very strict on the program. I started losing weight. My symptoms began to alleviate. After 4 months, my cycles became regular and my acne was less severe.
Wow.
She became a little less strict on the diet, but still followed most of the protocols, started to add some of the foods that initially were not recommended, but her symptoms continued to reverse. She then checked in with me and about supplementing iodine to help with possible thyroid issue. And that has helped. That helped. Kayleen said my nails stopped peeling, my heels stopped cracking, and my basal temperatures, which are her waking temperatures in the morning,
Uh-huh.
those started to rise slightly. I became even more lax with the diet, but still limited my refined carbs and sugars. A year after I started this modified program, all my symptoms but the facial hair were gone, and I was back to a healthy body mass index from losing 30 pounds.
Mm.
I followed up with my doctor. She was very impressed with my progress and said I was the first person in 15 years of her practice to reverse polycystic ovarian syndrome without medication.
Oh
Her
my
follow-up
goodness.
blood testing that she did, the results came back normal. The difference in my health today from a year ago is incredible, Kayleen said. I feel like I'm once again in control of my health and body. And I
Wow.
just want to add to that is that if she continues to implement that program, uh, she should be able to see a total reversal of her symptoms in terms of the facial hair and disappearing also, because conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome or endometriosis or infertility type problems like that generally take quite a while. A year or two is not uncommon to correct or reverse itself. And that's sometimes a tough kind of program, in a sense, to implement because women are accustomed, and most of us are accustomed to being able to be given or prescribed something quick that will take care of our symptoms.
It's interesting to me that Kayleen, something inside her just kind of recoiled from the idea of being on medication. And I experienced the same thing as a young married woman. The doctor had given me, birth control, the pill to be on for a while. And I thought something inside me did not want to go on the pill. And I started exploring some of my own understanding of my own fertility, my cycles and all that, and found it extremely beneficial. And that's part of what you're about, right? You want women to take ownership, as Kayleen was saying at the end of her letter there, of their health and their bodies.
Yes, that's exactly what I would love couples or women to take control over their bodies and understand what their fertility is about. Many women are fearful and are confused about their own fertility. They fear it because they think, okay, I can get pregnant almost any time I have relations with my husband. And that is just not the case. If they were to understand or learn about their fertility, they would know that, okay, I'm not fertile that long. I'm not fertile hardly at all compared to my husband. My fertility only lasts 12, 24 hours each month or each cycle. And that's where I like to propose to these couples that if they learn about their cycles and learn the science behind how the cycle works in coordination with the man's reproductive system and how that works in conjunction with the woman's fertile signs, then couples can get that. They can space their children. They can choose to avoid a pregnancy, or they can plan better a pregnancy because they will know when they are fertile or at peak fertility time. And then as an end result, by learning about what a normal healthy cycle looks like, they can compare that with their own cycles and understand or know some of the reasons why their cycle may or may not look as good as a typical healthy cycle.
Vicki, you were talking about spacing out children and timing the pregnancies. I think people would love that luxury. I feel like I've talked to so many young couples who are struggling. Are you saying that people who are infertile have a possibility of becoming more aware of their cycle and reversing that infertility?
It depends on the individual couple and if they have already tried to monitor some of their fertility signs. I do know that there are doctors who work with patients who are trying to conceive who will recommend, for instance, that they go home and take their temperature every morning. That is one thing that some couples may have already done, but they may not have learned if they have not actually formally learned fertility awareness through some sort of NFP provider. Then they may not know what that temperature sign means because there's more to it than just taking your temperature. And depending upon the physician that the couple is working with, he or she may not know as much about that as well. There are some physicians now who are actually trained in detail on fertility awareness and then can look at a woman's cycle and actually determine what might be wrong. And I've had enough experience myself with just analyzing fertility charts that I can tell a lot of things from a fertility chart also. So you don't have to have a physician doing this. Just somebody who has been very experienced and knowledgeable of natural family planning can also do the same thing. So it depends. It depends on the couple. If the couple has already been tested or has found that they may have a physical factor on either side, either partner, that could be causing that. A physical thing is something that I, as a fertility awareness consultant, I can't remedy that. But usually that type of thing is checked out by the couple's doctor early on in the assessment when they're trying to get pregnant. So I'm talking about couples who have had those types of things checked out and they check out okay. Then the next step would be, in my perspective, would be let's look at diet and lifestyle. Let's look at whether nutritional deficiency could be a factor, and or toxicity, because I believe toxicity is a huge factor that's impacting fertility issues these days. I look back on when I was growing up. I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin at the time, and my father didn't start using any chemicals on the land until I was maybe a teenager. So prior to that, growing up in our area, I doubt that there was any agricultural chemicals being used at all. So that would mean that our well water was probably pretty darn good, and that the food that we raised and the air that we breathed was pretty clean. But since then, and we're talking 50s up to 2016 today, we've got in the last 30 to 40 years a huge amount of toxins being used everywhere in our environment. And that it goes from the food that we take in, the air we breathe, and I'm talking also of internal toxicity with regard to gut balance, gut flora balance. Because when a woman, or even this could happen in a man too, when either of them have a gut flora imbalance, that causes toxins to be produced by certain types of bacteria that are in the gut. And when those toxins are produced, they affect negatively any of the hormones, maybe some of them more specific than others, but can cause some of the hormones to be less active or others to be in too much excess. So I like to propose to couples that they consider that as an initial step. Can we balance our gut flora better so that our own reproductive systems, in this case, and our own, like the ovaries in the woman and the testicles in the male, that they will produce normal amounts of hormone to help with fertility? I don't generally at all recommend that couples start taking exogenous or outside hormones, like the woman, for instance. There's plenty of bioidentical hormones out there now that many physicians will recommend to help with women who have, let's say, low progesterone production. Well, that doesn't get at the root of the problem. The balancing of the gut flora and eating nutrient-dense foods, the types of foods that will enhance fertility, those are the types of things that will improve overall fertility in a couple. And that's what I love about the Weston A. Price Foundation, is that they promote nutrient-dense foods. These are the foods that, of course, Dr. Price found in his worldwide travels that have high amounts of the fat-soluble vitamins and minerals that are required to make good fertility cycles, good quality sperm, healthy conceptions and pregnancies, and good lactation. So all of these things really revolve around food intake in terms of nutrients, so nutrient-dense intake, plus in this day and age, more so, much more so than in Dr. Price's day, toxicity is an additional negative factor, which probably in most cases should be given serious consideration.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you mentioned Dr. Price because, he went around the world looking for the healthiest people. He was actually looking for the people, he was primarily interested, I think, in their teeth. But of course, being a dentist. But what he found out was the people with the most perfect teeth, nice formation of the face and no cavities and so forth, were also robust, healthy, vibrant people and very fertile. So that he started to realize that connection between the wellness of the mouth and the overall body. And of course, that all traces back to what the people were eating. The people who were eating the traditional foods had that vibrant, robust, wonderful constitution and their mouths were in great shape as well, and they were fertile. But the people who began to eat the westernized diet with the refined flours and the oils and the sugar were the ones that were less healthy overall, more problems in their teeth, and less fertile.
Exactly. And what I found interesting about Dr. Price's words of wisdom when he was comparing the fertility of the couples, he made the remark about if they had nice broad palates and facial features, I think he said this specifically about the women. I don't know if he mentioned it about the men, but the hips would also be a good width also, and the pelvis would be in such good constitution that that the woman could deliver the baby with ease. And I see that now so much since I've learned about Dr. Price's work, is that I look at people I meet now, and of course the face is the one that you first notice when you meet people, but I make an internal assessment to myself saying, this is either good facial formation or this is not. And then if I get to know that person more, if I'm working with them in fertility awareness, then I can equate my initial assessment to their fertility cycles and how they are responding.
So fascinating. So I'm glad to learn that your protocol is to make these assessments and to help the person shore up their diet. It seems to me if they shore up their diet and do some things to help their bodies detox, they're going to feel better overall and function better overall. And hopefully, yes, that will lead to children, but I can sense that this would get them on the right path naturally.
Yes, and that's my proposition to them is always to try to use the natural route. And since I'm not a doctor and physician that can prescribe medications and surgery and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to go down that route at all, and I can't go down that route. But I always think we should first look at the natural ways to achieve the end goal.
That's fantastic.
One of the women that I worked with in the past, I have her initials SG, but I don't remember her first name. And of course, I want to keep her name confidential in this case. She is a wife and now a mother. And I just want to quote some responses that she sent to me. She said, "I really appreciated our conversation. You spent a lot of time with me on the phone. I've really made an effort to incorporate your dietary suggestions, and I know that helped a lot. I've been meaning to email you to tell you that I'm pregnant. I am 23 weeks along, and besides normal tiredness and all that, the baby and I are doing great. Thank you so much for all the amazing work you do." So it's always such a pleasure and a joy to receive these little short testimonials from people who have found the advice that I've given them to be helpful. And I think that's just a testimony to the information that we have available now, to the science about the fertility cycles and the knowledge and the long-term research that Dr. Price and others have done over the years.
So Vicki, tell me, do you think it would be a good idea for young women who are not even dating, let's say, or not even married? Would it be a good idea for them to start doing some of these things, taking their temperature in the morning, kind of getting an idea of how their cycle is functioning?
I know I have a daughter she's not young. I mean, she's like in her early 30s now, and she's not yet married, but she's going with somebody. And a year and a half ago, she shared with me that she had something odd happening with her cycle. And I said, well, why don't you just take your temperature every day for a couple, 2-3 months, and then I told her a little bit about the mucus sign, but she had heard me over the years. You know, she was growing up talking to clients on the phone, so she'd heard about the mucus sign and that type of thing. So she wasn't totally ignorant of that. So she did that for a few cycles, and actually we determined that little glitch that she had noticed in her cycle had been due to probably some stress that she was under the couple of months before that current cycle. And then I believe, I can't remember if that was when I suggested maybe that she take cod liver oil to help supplement her, what she was eating at the time or not. But there was something that we did, and apparently that has corrected itself, and she's never noticed anything since. But what I found out about her cycles, which was nice for me to know and for her to know, is that she had nice, what I would call a good, strong basal temperature, nice waking temperature in terms of the level. The level was good level, not really low. The low temperature levels can indicate some thyroid dysfunction, and down the road, if that woman would like to get pregnant, it might cause some problems. And then also overall metabolism. If your metabolism is real slow, your temperatures might be real low. And slow metabolism can mean weight gain, which is another common symptom of too low a thyroid function. So yes, I think young women, a teenager, I would say 13 to 15, 17-year-old young women
Mm-hmm.
will probably not be very interested in actually
Right.
observing those signs or even remembering to take their temperature in the morning. But if any of those young women have cycle issues, like intermittent, odd, and frequent bleeding episodes, or a lot of acne, or are, let's say, bleeding heavily when they have their periods, those types of factors might motivate those young women to learn more about their cycles so that they can then find out what to do about it from a natural perspective. Many of them go to physicians. Their mothers take them to their physician, and most physicians will just recommend something like a birth control pill to alleviate those types of symptoms. But again, that's not the route that I would like to take. I always like to try to take a natural route that will balance hormones and provide fertility for future.
It makes sense. I remember as a young woman, I was studying abroad for a year. Actually, I went to study in Mexico, and my period stopped. And I remember the doctor suggested I take birth control. And so I filled the prescription, but I thought, why am I doing this? I'm not, intimate with anyone. And it rubbed me the wrong way, and I didn't do it. And then when I came back to the States, my cycle corrected itself. But I'm glad I didn't, because what you're saying is those symptoms are a sign of a deeper problem, and the pill may alleviate the symptom, but it does not address the deeper issue.
Exactly. And that's what's so troublesome for me when I work with clients, but also it's something that the women don't realize when they get that prescription filled and start taking that pill. When a woman takes the birth control pill, she takes a placebo pill toward the end of the packet or whatever little container that the pill is placed in. And the last 4 to 7 days approximately are pills that contain iron or some sort of sugar, and these are pills that don't contain any hormones. And so when the woman takes one of those each day for that last 4 to 7 days, her artificial hormones that she's been taking every day before that, start to drop drastically. And that drop causes the woman to bleed from the uterus, and the woman then thinks she's having her true period at a regular time each month, which makes women think, boy, am I fine now. I'm regular. This pill is doing the job. My doctor was right. Well, but that's not the true case, because she was just working under artificial hormones that she was taking every day. So if she discontinues those pills, she will probably revert back to her old system. Her reproductive system will act the same way as it did before she went on that pill.
I see. I think of an illustration. I've heard that actors or actresses sometimes, to make themselves cry, will, put some eye drops, some saline solution in their eyes to make it look like they're crying. It looks like they're crying, but they're not really crying. So in the same way, the pill is regulating your cycle, or making it appear as if everything's stable and normal, but it really isn't.
Exactly. And I have talked to so many women who did not know that when they were prescribed that pill and took it and felt like they had really been helped, and yet their doctor had not told them that it was not going to correct the problem. And they were really distraught afterwards because some of these women had been taking the pill for years. And then that long-term use of the pill like that can actually damage some of her reproductive system, like the inside of the cervix, the mouth of the uterus that contains the specialized cells that produce that mucus to aid women's fertility. And that damage can sometimes, not often, but sometimes be permanent. So women who take that pill initially for some other reason, but down the road want to get pregnant, may find that difficult to do because of the damage that has been caused by those artificial hormones.
Now, Vicki, does the pill also affect the balance of gut flora?
Oh, yes, unfortunately, that's the case too, like big time. And because you're taking those artificial hormones like almost three weeks or more per month.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that type of an artificial hormone also impacts negatively the gut flora. So there's going to be certain types of bacteria or viruses or other types, maybe of parasites, that actually gain some control over the other, what I would call beneficial flora,
Mm-hmm.
the good guys, the ones that make us feel good and have our hormones all in balance and that type of thing. So the pill, yes, is really detrimental to gut flora and will negatively impact that as well. So women who have been on a birth control pill may want to just consider, okay, my gut flora probably has been damaged somewhere along the line, and I probably should do some things to correct that before I try to get pregnant even, would be a helpful thing.
And what would some of those things be?
Well, in terms of, and this goes back to Dr. Price's work and the Weston A. Price Foundation's work, but probiotic foods, the good old fermented foods,
Mm-hmm.
your homemade sauerkrauts, beet kvass, all of those types of things will introduce gently good beneficial bacteria. And then, of course, while one is doing that, one would not want to be continuing to take something like the birth control pill because it would defeat the purpose. But that would be one thing. Probiotic foods. Supplements of probiotics would be okay too. But again, I always stress real food first. That's better than just buying a pill. I mean, we're just going from a birth control pill to a probiotic pill,
Mm-hmm.
which of course is better. But the thing is we're not making some changes in our diet, which are going to be the most helpful in the long run. So probiotic foods would help heal the gut. Also, and this is what's so nice about the Nourishing Broth book that Sally has out now, is that the broth is extremely healing to the gut.
Mm.
And that is something, in the traditional cultures, they frequently used broth made from bones, parts of the animal on a regular basis. And that has lost lots of favor over the years with us, is that none of us hardly have ever made a broth or even know what a broth is. So broth would be another very healing factor type food, and good animal fats are also extremely healing to the gut. So if a woman can't do anything else but make some of her own sauerkraut, make some of her own bone broth, and consume some good animal fats, if she can do like these three things, that would be a great help to healing her gut.
That's wonderful news. And I have to say, Vicki, I'll interject right here, that I am one of those very busy people who doesn't make her own broth or sauerkraut or any of these things, but I have a farm nearby where I get all of those things. Mm-hmm. I get kvass, I get,
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, it is wonderful. So I just want to tell the busy mom out there, or the busy young woman who's like, I want to get better, I want to heal my gut and be prepared for pregnancy when the time comes, but I don't have time to make all these things. There are resources. And actually, I understand, Vicki, that you're a chapter leader. A lot of us have a food resource list for folks who contact us. So that might be a good step in the right direction for getting some of this real food you're talking about.
Right, Hilda, exactly. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. And yes, as a chapter leader, I regularly give out information on resources in our local area, in the Cincinnati, Ohio area where I'm living, about farmers or artisans who produce and or make these types of foods. And I say I buy some beet kvass myself too, because the artisans that make it have a much better quality than what I can make when I produce it myself. So yes, there are all kinds of, actually, I mean, even online you can find places that will ship those products to you. And what's nice too about the Weston A. Price Foundation is that the shopping guide has a list too, a detailed list of artisans and farmers, producers who make or grow these types of foods, so that you don't have to make everything on your own.
Vicki, that's just great. You're so right. And I hope that our listeners will take advantage of these things that we've been mentioning. So as we begin to wrap up, it sounds like people should look into obviously consulting with their health professionals for help in this area, but they need to know that they can also look into some alternative consultations with natural family planning folks to get a better understanding of their fertility and how to achieve pregnancy.
Yes. I would concur with that. All of that is great things. As I'd mentioned initially, there are some physical factors that cause infertility that a natural route will not correct, but that's where the physician comes in. But I would also encourage those people who are working with their physician to go outside the box in a sense, and also look at the alternative routes in terms of just diet, lifestyle, detoxification, working with someone who knows how to understand and interpret fertility cycles. And if you can find somebody like that, that would be great. I do some work. I have a website that couples are encouraged to visit if they want. I'd be happy to work with couples long distance through Skype, email, phone. So there are lots of alternatives now, whereas 30, 40 years ago there weren't. Young couples just have a lot more to choose from now than they did years ago.
Are there any other resources, books or websites that you'd recommend?
There are a number of books that relate to like diet and fertility, but some of them just don't cover the essentials of the nutrient-dense foods. The one book that I found very helpful, and this was written by a gal within the Weston A. Price Foundation, called Beautiful Babies. That's a wonderful little book by Kristen Michaelis, talking about how to prepare for pregnancy, what types of foods to eat, and relating that to overall fertility. That's a nice little book. I found that to be helpful. But I've not run across really any other ones that really cover the kinds of things that I look for.
Well, as we wrap up, what is one thing you would recommend that the listener do to improve their health or their fertility?
One of the things that I find myself repeating over and over again to women, I usually talk mostly to women, but not all the time, is that one, eat more animal fats, and the flip side of that is decrease or eliminate processed vegetable oil products. And those two, to me, are probably key things and something that a person can do pretty darn quickly if they have a mind to.
Excellent, Vicki. Thank you so much. I hope that this information will help people take charge of their health and improve their fertility. Thank you for speaking with us today.
I appreciate it so much, Hilda. Thank you. Take care.